Zettel für die lange Weg. 2 Flaschen Whisky für die Zeit. Und ich date gern habe, du bist dabei. Maria geht, fahrt mal weg, ist weit. Wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht mehr, was ich mach, du sehst nicht mehr, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watsch sehen. Hab kriegt mein Zettel für den langen Weg. Du schönste, als mir finden kann. Es hat Maria und Dale ganz wunderbar. Hass ich dir den weißen Dank. Wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht mehr, was ich mach, du sehst nicht mehr, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watsch sehen. Well, Gouda Ovid, Liebe Light, and welcome back to another episode of PA Dutch Live. Can you believe we are almost at the end of October already? It's spooke Zeit, as we'd say in Pennsylvania Dutch. It's kind of spooky time or ghost time coming up as we're here at the end of October. If this is your first time joining us, welcome, as we say in Pennsylvania Dutch, welcome. We do this every month, and we have a lot of fun trying to bring you informational episodes about all things Pennsylvania Dutch, whether it's our history, that's something we're going to be talking about tonight, our culture, our language, our food. And I'm so glad that you took your time out of your busy evenings or whatever time it is, wherever you are when you're watching this, to join us. If you are a regular, you know what to do. If you're joining us on the YouTube channel or on Facebook, please put in the comment section where you are joining us from so I can give out some shout outs here. And I got people already throwing comments into the comment section. So let me give some quick shout outs here to our good friend Norman Jung. He joins us every month, staying up till midnight in Germany. Joining us, hello from Steinbach am Glan near Ramstein Air Force Base. If you know someone that served in the Air Force at any point and was stationed in Germany, most likely they were pretty close to Norman there, just outside of Ramstein. Norman, thanks so much. I got a surprise for you coming up here in a minute. We also have Wayne Herring joining us from Oviedo, Florida. He's Rachel Yoder's dad. I'm going to give Rachel Yoder a shout out too here in a little bit. But Wayne, thanks for joining us from sunny, warm Florida. I'm sure. Dr. Old Naben schön aus der alten Heimat. Greetings, a nice evening out of the old country, the old homeland. Yes, Dr. Earl, thanks for joining us. Seth, our good friend, Gouda Ovid, Doug, und Ali Epa. Good evening, everybody. Seth, you always join us every month as well. Our dear friend Carol is joining us from, once again, is there any other beautiful downtown Burnville? There's only one, and it's the gem of Western Berks County. How's that sound, Carol? Put that on a bumper sticker for me. Dolly Moyer joins us every month as well, again from Fleetwood, and we got Berks County well represented here tonight. Derek is joining us from Wind Gap. That's a town that hasn't been talked about in a while. Seth is reminding us that he's joining us from San Diego, California. West Coast represent. Wiswasser Bluegrass. Well, I know who the Wiswassers are. Hey, is that does that mean you guys got a new bluegrass YouTube channel? I'm gonna have to check that out. Wiswassers, I definitely will. Our good friend Craig Benner is Kreger is joining us. Gries von Ephrata. Oh, beautiful Ephrata. That's a great town. Big Bad Dog 455 joining you from my couch. Well, I've sat on your couch, I think, Big Bad Dog. That's good. I'm glad you're joining us. Rachel, your dad just said hi, but she says Gudo at Boyerstädtel in the Haas. Boyerstädtel is in the Haas. Donna is joining us from Holtwood, PA, and John is joining us from Walnut Port up there in Northampton County, Pennsylvania. Guys, if I'm not excited as I normally am, I'm still coming off that Phillies loss last night. I've been a lifelong Phillies fan. That was tough last night, but you win some, you lose some. We didn't win that one last night. So I got to find some energy from deep down in the belly somewhere to get you guys all excited for tonight's show. Bio T is joining us. It's Todd in Tucson, Arizona being represented. And then finally, we got another Boyertown waving their hand. David is there in Boyertown. Well, every month, as those of you that join us know, we like to put together a nice show. And I think this month is going to be a great one because in a little bit, we're going to have returning guest Lynn Otto. Lynn had been on a previous episode where he told us about all things Conrad Weiser. Tonight, we're going to stay in that time period, but we're going to talk about something a little different, the forts of the Blue Mountains. And for those of you that grew up near the Blue Mountains, and this is going to be, close to home for all of you. But even if you didn't grow up in that part of Pennsylvania Dutch country, it's a very important part of our history that most kids never learn about in school. So it's a great opportunity to have an expert here on tonight to tell us all about that. Real quick, Hunter says Midlothian, Virginia, enjoying fall in Pennsylvania currently, though. Great for joining us, Hunter. Hope you're enjoying Pennsylvania. The leaves are really colorful where I live here in the mountains of north central Pennsylvania. Some things for your calendars. Saturday night, you doing anything? Are you in the northern Berks County area? Well, now listen. Join us for the King Frost Parade. It's Saturday, October 28th. Downtown Hamburg. Parade starts at 7 o'clock. We almost didn't have it. It almost got canceled this year. And thanks to a grassroots effort by the people of Hamburg, they resurrected really quickly old King Frost. And he's going to be coming down 3rd Street and up 4th Street on Saturday night. I will be there. If you happen to see me on the sidewalk, give me a big hey duck, and I'll say hey back. Also, mark your calendars. Here's a really great opportunity for you to learn about an aspect of the artistic side of the Pennsylvania Dutch at our good friends at the Berks History Center on Saturday, November 4th. If you're not doing anything, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., they are running a Scherenschnitte workshop. And if you're not familiar with what that is the traditional art of scissor cutting or paper scissor cutting. You can see some examples there. I'm sure that they'll teach you everything you need to know about how to create one of these awesome pieces of art, a great representation of our part of our artistic culture. Another big announcement here in a couple of weeks on Saturday, November 11th, the Ole Dal, so the Ole Valley Versamling, it's the 32, so the 32nd, will be taking place that Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. at the Ole Valley Fair Center. It's $25 a ticket. So for those of you that have ever been to a Versamling, there's a couple myths out there we need to clear up. We have in Pennsylvania Dutch country, we have Versamlingen, and then we have Groundhog Lodge get-togethers. Traditionally, Groundhog Lodge get-togethers are all men. That's starting to change a little bit, but for the most part, they are still kind of like a boys' club type thing. But a Versamling is open to men and women. So if this is an opportunity, if you wanted to join an afternoon of really good Pennsylvania Dutch fun, great food, there'll be a meal, there's going to be entertainment, music, it's a great opportunity for you. You do not have to speak or understand Pennsylvania Dutch to go to a Versamling. It helps, of course. Maybe you'll miss some of the jokes if you don't understand Pennsylvania Dutch. But the last couple Versamlings that I've been to, there's been more and more people that didn't speak Pennsylvania Dutch, and the entertainment and the speakers will do things in both languages. It is an awesome opportunity to get out and be among other Pennsylvania Dutch people. Maybe it's an opportunity for you to learn a little bit about the language and definitely to experience what a real Pennsylvania Dutch get-together is like. This is a great one. You can, for more information, there's a phone number there. Also, they have their own Facebook page. You can get on there, and they have an email address. Tickets are $25. So doors open at 12:30 there in Ole. There are other Versamlings that take place throughout the year. This is Ole's that's going to be taking place on the 11th. But I'll be, letting people know when other ones are coming up throughout the Berks County, but also the Pennsylvania Dutch country and region. As the Ole Dal Versamling is joining us tonight, they say all are welcome. Everybody is welcome. And definitely you can check out their website or their Facebook page for more information. Lenora is joining us from Lakeland, Florida. How about that? Florida's represented well tonight. For those of you that follow me on Facebook, you also saw that I posted this, but I'm sharing this with everybody joining the show tonight. A friend of the channel, Rose Fisher, who is currently a PhD student candidate at Penn State University, is involved in a research project all about the Pennsylvania Dutch language, and she's looking for people to help participate. This was the post that she put on social media this week, just actually yesterday, I think it was, but they are looking for people that are descendants of Mennonites and Amish or current Mennonites or Amish. I know there's probably not too many Amish on Facebook. However, this was posted. They're looking for people that be interested in partaking in their study. There's an opportunity for you to get a $15 Amazon gift card if you fill out the survey that they're doing. If you're interested in more information, it's pendutchwords@gmail.com to help that PhD student and her research team out. We had Norman Young. I gave him a shout out earlier. He posted this the other day. Norman is a good friend of the channel and a dear friend of mine who lives in Germany, and he is super excited about all things Pennsylvania Dutch. He's part of an organization in Germany that tries to promote Pennsylvania Dutch and our connections to the area of Germany, the Rhineland-Pfalz, where we originally came from in the 16 and 1700s. He was at an event recently in Germany, of course, where he lives, where he got to meet the American consulate who's there, Norman Thatcher Scharf, and this was in Frankfurt. But it was a great opportunity for the two cultures to kind of meet, shake hands, talk about the strong partnership that our two countries have, and that was on German American Day, which is October 6th. And Norman shared this on his Instagram feed, and I thought I really want to share that picture too, to show you that there are a lot of people in Germany that are super interested in our culture and our story, because we are those long lost cousins of theirs. We got on the boat, their brother or sister stayed there, and now 8-9 generations later, we're still here. We got this relationship, and I really see that relationship between our two countries and this region of Germany particularly growing rapidly. There's going to be a bus tour coming to Pennsylvania next year with all Germans from this region, and they can't wait to come tour around Berks County and June, or in Lancaster and Lebanon, and see the whole region and meet Pennsylvania Dutch people. So that's great. And Norman, keep doing the great work that you are doing, and all of your colleagues over there as well. Every week, if you join us, every month, you know that I do a hee-haw style salute to some town in the greater Pennsylvania Dutch country. And this month, I'm bringing it local for me to my hometown of Centerport, Pennsylvania, which is in beautiful Berks County. The little town of Centerport, founded in 1884, population of 387. It's a mile away from the farm that I grew up on. My grandparents had a house in Centerport, so I just want to give them a salute to good old little Centerport, Berks County, Pennsylvania. Enough schwätzing. It is time to bring on our guest. As I said earlier at the beginning of the show, our guest this month was on a previous show, I believe it was last year, where he gave an amazing and informative talk on Conrad Weiser. That's Lynn Otto, and Lynn Otto's pinch hitting tonight. I have to tell everybody this. If you didn't see my promo, I know last month I advertised that Charlie Adams was going to be the guest this month. Well, Charlie couldn't make it, and at the last minute he had to back out for personal reasons, and that's fine. He said he wants to come on sometime in the future, and I was kind of in a pinch, and I thought, I know just who to call. He's my Batman. So Lynn Otto, I reached out to Lynn. I said, Lynn, I saw that you had just done a talk at the Berks History Center on this topic, which was one that I find really interesting. And I asked him, and Lynn hit that home run and said, Doug, I'd love to come on the show. So without further ado, Lynn, welcome to the show.
Hey, Doug, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Good. Hey, I was hoping that I could wear my Phillies Red October t-shirt tonight, but now it's Blue October.
It sure is, isn't it? Hey, Lynn, just to refresh everybody's minds, and for people that are joining us for the first time, tell us a little bit about yourself. Do you have Pennsylvania Dutch background, Pennsylvania Dutch roots?
Yeah, I grew up in the Higgins Valley. My grandparents, my mom and dad, all spoke Dutch, and yeah, I just love Pennsylvania Dutch cooking.
Who doesn't, right? Hey, so you talked to us earlier about Conrad Weiser. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about these forts along the Blue Mountains. Whatever got you interested in this time period of history?
Well, real short story, hikes in the woods. And when it would start getting dark or something like that, my dad would say, "Come on, we got to make time before we got to get back to the fort." And I've always loved forts. I was doing some research about 40 years ago in the Pottsville Library when I stumbled upon some of these forts, and I fell in love with it. And well, I'm still talking about it.
That's great. Well, Lynn has this great presentation he put together, and we're going to walk through this, and he's going to tell us the history. Of course, people that are watching at home, if you have a question or whatever, throw it in the comment section, and it will be able to ask Lynn in real time. And Lynn, since I'm controlling the show, you just tell me when to advance to the next slide, and I'll be your clicker.
Will do. All right, next slide.
You got it.
So we really need to talk briefly about why we needed these forts. And it starts out with William Penn the Younger. On 1681, King Charles II granted a huge piece of land because the king offered was to offset the debts owed by his father a politician, Sir William Penn. Next.
Okay.
So, what is a proprietary colony, which Pennsylvania was? It's certain colonies such as Maryland, Delaware, and Pennsylvania were granted to an individual or group by the British Crown, and they were granted full rights of self government. So, this meant the Penn family ruled Pennsylvania until the Revolution. You know, some of the Virginia, the king always appointed a governor. Well, in this case, Pennsylvania was ruled on its own.
Okay.
Next. So Penn's Woods. Penn, a Quaker, was an advocate of democracy and religious freedom, known for his amicable relationships and successful treaties with the Lenape natives who resided in present-day Pennsylvania prior to the European settlements in the state. So William Penn, for all intents and purposes, was a very, very good man. So if he was, hopefully everybody could get along with everybody else. Next. So believe it or not, Doug, for about 70 years in Pennsylvania, everybody, for the most part, got along. There were a few exceptions for it. There was a author that wrote a book some years ago, and he called this time in Pennsylvania the peaceable kingdom. Everybody was getting along with everybody else, and there was no need for any standing army and no need for any forts. We'll see in a little bit, though, that the winds of war will start blowing pretty fast. Next.
Just I have a quick question about this because I've never really had anybody to ask this to. So as like these Pennsylvania Dutch colonists would come and as they were, encroaching farther and farther north from Philadelphia and expanding into the frontier at the time, of course they came into contact with Lenape and other native tribes. But what you're telling us, for the most part, that was a pretty peaceable interaction between these new German settlers, these Pennsylvania Dutch, and the natives that they were coming into contact with.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, what I guess a lot of people would probably think the opposite. What to your knowledge, why was that interaction peaceable and why wasn't it violent from the start?
Well, Penn being a Quaker, his relationship was, he didn't want to bear arms or cause any harm to anyone. And honestly, Doug, from the start, they were not Penn was not trying to steal the native land. He was very upfront with them.
Okay. Okay.
So one of the problems with Pennsylvania back in the 1740s and 50s is the fact that nobody knew what the western boundary was. And this slide shows you that Virginia, Connecticut, Maryland, they all claimed rights to the western boundary, which at that one, my thought was that Penn probably figured that the Susquehanna River was the western boundary. And we're going to see very soon that that was a lot different. Next. So in the early 1750s, the French started encroaching into western Pennsylvania. They started building a series of forts. Fort Presque Isle, which is at present-day Erie, Fort LeBoeuf at Waterford, Fort Michaud at present day. And the one that caused the most problems was Fort Duquesne at the forks of the Ohio, present-day Pittsburgh. Next. So you can see in this slide that Fort Duquesne stood right at the point. Today, if you go to Point State Park in Pittsburgh, that's where Fort Duquesne was. Next. And there is a artist rendition of what Fort Duquesne looked like. Next. So there were a series of events brought on by basically the colony to try to take Fort Duquesne. George Washington tried, failed. General Braddock in July of 1755 got within a few miles of Fort Duquesne and was attacked by French and Indian raiding parties. And basically, the entire east coast of Pennsylvania, or the eastern part of Pennsylvania, was open to attack, because remember, we didn't need any armies, and we didn't need any. The first attack occurred at Penn's Creek in October of 1755, and really the frontier was aflame. Next. So how was New France going to wage this war? In 1750, the English colonists along the eastern seaboard numbered about 1 million people. In French Canada, the Great Lakes, and New Orleans, the French population was about only 60,000. So how would France wage war without sufficient numbers? Next. It was in their alliance to their natives. And here you see what the raiding parties look like. As the Algonquin, Delaware, Shawnee, Cherokee, and the French milice, which were raised up in Canada, and their age was anywhere from 16 to 60. You would volunteer and you would go fight for France. Next.
Real quick, Craig wants to know, where is Penn's Creek that you mentioned before?
It's up in the Selinsgrove area.
Okay. I know where that is. Okay.
So how did this whole work? Well, it really, they called it La Petite Guerre, and it was troops participating in Petite Guerre, operated separately from the main army, often using speed and maneuvered for quick attacks and ambushes in support of army's goals, usually in small groups with a French soldier in command. And this French term is what they did, and they did it very well. Next. So 1755, in the areas in Berks County, Tulpehocken Valley for sure. If you see smoke, you're probably too late to help. That was a common thing. Next.
So what would be burning? This would have been after a raid would have happened?
After a raid, the fields, the farms, the buildings, the cattle, this would be, they will all be wiped out.
So that was their
next.
MO. They would come in and destroy everything in its path.
Correct.
Okay.
And take captives. Yep. So among the scenes that you would see, especially in the Tulpehocken Valley, is people in any state and as forms, lying by creeks, in the burning cabins. You couldn't get away from the destruction. Again, these raiding parties came, set fire, and got out of there. Next.
Where were they getting? This is probably a stupid question, but where were these natives that were attacking getting their weapons and ammunition from? Supplied from the French?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next. So I titled this one "Unwelcome Guests." You imagine you're sitting down with your family, trying to have supper, and a thump comes to the door all too often. Next. As I said, children were taken captives, and this is a very interesting subject. Children from about the age of 6 and up, generally speaking, were not killed. They were taken into captivity and assimilated into the native culture. Next.
And we have stories of, were there ever kids that were taken, lived with the natives for a while, and then eventually made their way back to their European families? Or do we have stories of that, or wasn't that necessarily common?
We have stories of children being captives and even given the opportunity to leave the native culture, and they chose to stay. It was probably about 50 or 60% of the children that were captured decided to stay with their native families.
Wow, that's crazy. Here's a quick question for you from Dr. Ull. Do you happen to know what was the French officer's stance on this murder and mutilation of particularly of fellow Christians?
Very good question. And the short answer is they really didn't care. They were looking for the power and prestige and for the fur trade that was very, very abundant in the Ohio Valley.
Okay.
This is just a scene of a young adult being taken. And again, they were simulated into the native culture. Infants, not so much. They were probably just killed outright at the scene. And people my age today, there was no use for them. So they, again, were put down. Next. So how did this, all this was happening, and what happened to try to stem the tide? It took two settlers from Womelsdorf to load two mutilated wagon and drive it down to Philadelphia and put the bodies on the steps of the governor's house in Philadelphia. The governor, prior to that, did not want any news coming into Philadelphia because he feared a riot. Well, you can only imagine when this happened, things started to change very quickly.
I never
Next.
heard that story. That's crazy.
It is. It is.
At that time, was William Penn was dead by this point. Were his
Next.
kids the ones that were in charge at this point?
Whose kids?
William Penn's.
Oh, yes, and they would appoint somebody as their own governor. At this time, it was Governor Morris.
Okay. Okay.
So the assembly in Pennsylvania, which was the governing body, was made up largely of all Quakers, and of course, they didn't want to appropriate money for soldiers or forts. However, after Philadelphia, they changed their mind, and the Pennsylvania Regiment was formed in 1756. There were three battalions, and we're going to be talking tonight about the first battalion that was commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Conrad Weiser.
Okay.
Next. So, why the forts? At the time of the French and Indian War, the Blue Mountains marked the actual settlement line of the white man. The reason for the forts was to stop the flow of Indians and French into the valley south of the Blue Mountains after Braddock's defeat in 1755. Next. So this picture here shows you, or slide shows you, connected with the red line, the 8 forts that we're going to be talking about tonight. And we're going to start at Fort Hunter, and we're going to work our way west to east. Next.
Okay. And that's pretty much the line of the mountains. For people joining us that aren't familiar with this part of Pennsylvania, for example, there's a line of mountains called the Blue Mountains that run right where that red line is, essentially.
Yes. So Conrad Weiser was given the task of building the forts along the Blue Mountains and commanding the troops to man and patrol them. And they actually also were building their own forts. Weiser, for the most part, used his home in Heidelberg Township near Womelsdorf as his headquarters. Next.
Okay.
So this is what the Pennsylvania Regiment recreated looks like. However, arms, our weapons, and so forth are all taken from diaries and letters. So this is pretty much what the troops would have looked like 250 years ago. Next. So we'll start with Fort Hunter. It was built in 55 to 56 at the junction of the Susquehanna River and the Fishing Creek. A stockaded wall was built around an existing log house. The garrison size at the fort was about 36 men, with Captain Thomas McKee in command. Next. So as we go through the forts, the last slide of the fort, you'll see this picture again, and you'll see a red mark uh, uh, designating what fort we're talking about. Next. The next one was Manada Gap. It was built at Manada Gap to protect the trail to the Clark and Likens Valley, constructed by Frederick Smith. And it was about 12 miles from Fort Hunter. Next.
And at this point, just to put people into perspective, with horse, how long would it take to cover 12 miles? If you had a ride from Fort Menanda Gap to Hunter, how long of a trip would that take by horse, roughly?
Probably the best part of one day.
Yeah.
If you were on
Okay.
foot, the rule of thumb is 3 miles an hour. Horses, you could do a lot better.
Yeah.
Next.
So we can see Menanda. Yeah.
So the next one in line is Fort Swatara. It was built at the gap in the mountains through which the Swatara Creek flows through. It was a log wall built around an existing house and barn in the fall of '55 on the property of Peter Hadrick. It was commanded by Captain Frederick Smith. There's an interesting, another interesting description of Fort Swatara, and it says that it was built in the shape of a weaver's. Oh, I can't think of the word. And the other interesting fact was, as it says, it was built around an existing house and barn. The only problem was the barn had a thatched roof, which did not bode well. So they had to change that. Next.
One flaming arrow is all it takes, right?
Absolutely. Next.
So there we
And
can
you'll
see
see
Swatara.
Swatara. Next. So Fort Henry, built on land owned by Dietrich VI, 14 miles east. It was constructed of heavy timbers with a wall of loose stone inside. The most formidable of all the forts along the Blue Mountains, commanded by Captain Christian Busey of Reading. And this one is just located off the top of Hawken Path, just a few miles south of the town of Bethel.
Oh, just outside of Bethel. Okay.
Yep. And there you see Fort
is.
Henry. Next. Fort Northkill was 11 miles east of Fort Henry. A stockaded fence built only 45 feet square, named from the Northkill Creek, and it was commanded by a sergeant.
So
Next.
these people that these commanders, this was like Conrad Weiser would assign these guys to these forts in command. Is that how it
Yes.
worked? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then there'd be
Yep.
soldiers in there defending at all times with
That
their
is
commander.
that is correct.
Okay.
And
That's the
there's
one
Northkill.
closest to where I grew up. I know about Fort Northkill, I should say. Yeah.
Next. So Fort Lebanon. It's 11 miles east of Northkill, built by Jacob Morgan in 1756. The fort was 100-foot square, 14-foot high, and had a 30 by 20-foot storeroom within and a spring inside and a 12-foot square magazine. What's interesting about Fort Lebanon is the fact that it was placed on the north side of the Blue Mountains, not the south. The reason is probably lost in history. It hasn't been found yet. There is no logical reason that I can come up with why you would have built it on the north side, but that is where it was built, and it's near the present-day town of Auburn.
Auburn. Okay.
Next, and there you see Fort Lebanon to the north side of the Blue Mountains. Next. Yeah. Fort Franklin. This was a little bit further, 19 miles from Fort Lebanon, and named Fort Franklin, I'm sorry, named after Colonel Benjamin Franklin. Realized that Benjamin Franklin was actually a colonel in the Pennsylvania Regiment for about 6 to 8 months until he discovered that he'd rather be a politician. It was very poorly built. William Parsons wrote to Franklin in 1756. Some people have graced the fort at Alamango with your name, and I don't blame them for it. But I'm sure it will not grace your name till it is put into better condition than it is at present. The
Politics is a
story
little.
is on a hill, looking at Fort Franklin. You could look right through the stockade, and so I'm sure Franklin was not really proud of this his name there.
Probably not.
And there you have Fort Franklin. Next, and last in the line is the only Blue Mountain fort with an existing drawing by Ben Franklin. It is 18 foot high. It had swivel guns mounted on the bastions. Fort Allen was built where the present day town of
Weisport. Okay.
Weisport is. Next. And there's Fort Allen. Next. So this is the drawing of Fort Allen that Benjamin Franklin had drawn, and it's a rather unusual looking fort. Benjamin Franklin was kind of an unusual person too.
Yeah.
The only remnant of any of the Blue Mountain forts that I have talked about tonight, the only element is the well. Fort Allen is still in existence today.
So the rest were all just after the troubles were over, these forts were dismantled or just left go. Is that essentially what happened to them?
Well, all of them were wooden forts, and after their use died away, the people will come and tear them down and use the timbers for their farms and so forth. But yeah,
Okay.
there's they were all gone by the war ended.
Okay.
Next. So were these forts a success? In a 2-year period from 56 to 58, 200 documented cases of settlers killed in the Tulpehocken Valley. In the same period, only 4 natives were killed by soldiers on patrol. Now, I want to mention briefly about the 200 documented cases. That is bodies found. It is my belief that that number probably could reach around, because many of these people will never heard of again, or their bodies never found. So you can see just from the descriptions here that this area was not a real safe place up until 1758. So, next.
It's unbelievable. I know those numbers are crazy when you really think about it. Because if you had a farm, if you lived on a farm that was 2 miles or 3 miles from one of these forts, there's no way those soldiers would ever get to you in time. Like that raid would come, hit you, and done. I mean, it's just it's unbelievable to think about, really.
Yes. Next. So, Doug, this is the slide that you asked me about whether I had made a mistake. So, I guess as an analogy, I'm going to draw on something from World War II. You know, the forts of the Blue Mountains were not a military success at all. But what it did do was give and maybe a boost of morale to the settlers that lived around them. Well, the same thing happened in World War II. Japanese invaded Pearl Harbor, attacked it, and for the first 2 years of the war, the Japanese victories were one right after another. However, on April 18th, 1942, Colonel Jimmy Doolittle took off from the USS Hornet with B-25 bombers. Their mission? To bomb Tokyo. The success of that operation was very, very negligible. However, it really boosted the morale in the United States, and also showed Japanese that their homeland was within reach of our planes and our forces.
Now I get it. Thanks for making that analogy.
Next. So this is a winter scene of one of the forts that exists today, Martin Station. If you ever get a chance to visit down there, it is a wonderful, in my mind, one of the best replicas of what a frontier fort looked like. And Doug, thank you again for having me, and good evening.
Hey, Lynn, just a couple things that one Dolly wants to know. There are no remnants, but are there historical markers at these fort sites?
Yes, pretty much every fort has a Pennsylvania historical marker. Yes.
And from the research that you have done and all of this
Just
knowledge
noticed
you're
a
going to
while
have.
back. I just noticed a while back that the sign that used to be at the site of Fort Henry is gone. So
Oh,
I don't know.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that, but many of the other ones do.
And from your knowledge of this time period, where this boundary line was at the Blue Mountains, were the majority of the settlers in that region, were they Pennsylvania Dutch families, or was it a mix of Pennsylvania Dutch families and English? What was the makeup of this region at that time period in the 1750s?
Tell you that the First Battalion Pennsylvania Regiment was made up of all Pennsylvania German soldiers. Um,
Okay.
Probably their drill was in German. And yes, most of the settlers in that area were from Germany.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
That's good to know. So Conrad Weiser was with, I mean, he was leading his own people, so to speak, in that
Correct.
regiment. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
All right.
Yes. So,
Awesome.
for this is a subject that not many people know about, and I was drawn to it, and
Yeah.
I just enjoy talking about the local history, and these forts were part of our heritage. You know, Many of our ancestors might have even been in the army or were settlers in that area. And one other interesting fact that I found in the two, as Weiser called them, bearded Swissers. So
Okay.
they were either an Amish or Mennonite pair that actually served in the military.
How about that? Okay.
That is fascinating to me.
Yeah, that really is. That really is. I'd never
Yeah.
heard that
So
before.
what circumstance made them make that decision? We'll probably never know. But I
Right.
couldn't believe that when I first read it, and I had to read it like 6 times.
Like, am I really reading this right?
Bearded.
Well, Lynn, I thank you so much, guys. As you heard Lynn say, there are historical markers for a lot of these forts. Is there one book out there, or a book that you would recommend if people did want to learn more about this time period in Pennsylvania?
Yes, it's called the Pennsylvania Frontier Forts, 1753 to 1758, I believe. It's by William Hunter. It is the Bible on the Blue Mountain Fort. We just so happen to sell that in our museum store at the Conrad Weiser Homestead, in
Oh, there you
case you're
go.
interested.
Well, now that's it, people. You got to make a trip to the Conrad Weiser homestead, and then you go in the gift shop and you pick up that book, and then you can learn about all things Conrad Weiser while you're there too. And it's a beautiful site,
Yeah, it
absolutely beautiful site.
honestly is a very good book about it. Yes.
Awesome. Well, Lynn, I can't thank you enough for all the knowledge you have, and I appreciate that you love to share this story with us because, as I mentioned at the beginning, and people know this, most kids in Pennsylvania growing up never hear this, and you don't learn about this stuff in school. And then by the time you're old enough to want to learn about it, then you don't know who to even go to learn about it. So,
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing this part of, for a lot of us, we are descendants of these people that either survived, or I had somebody comment earlier that they had a relative that was killed in one of these raids. I had a relative killed in one of these raids on my dad's side of the family out farther west in Pennsylvania, but it was one of the, exactly like you described. It was a raid on a region where there were some German settlers, and it happened so fast there was nothing anybody could do about it. By the time they were able to defend themselves, it was too late. And
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of us that have these stories, and maybe they've been lost in our family history because maybe it just wasn't passed down or whatever. But there's probably more of us here. It's like Lynn said, if there were 200 bodies found, how many more settlers were disappeared, were killed, and the bodies were never found, etc. So you might have this in your family history that you just don't know about too, for a lot of us. So I just
That
find
is
it absolutely
correct.
interesting.
Yep.
Lynn, thanks so much for coming on. If there's another topic you want to teach us about sometime in the future, don't hesitate to reach out, my friend.
All right. Thank you.
No, thank you, my friend. Take care and happy Halloween next week. Put on your
Thank
uniform and go
you.
trick or treating.
Max
All right,
Good.
Mock Scoot. What an interesting history we have here in Pennsylvania, and I wish more people knew it. And I'm glad that those of you that joined tonight, whether you wanted to hear it or not, you're getting it. You're getting it. Lynn is a wealth of knowledge, and he does talk from time to time at the Berks History Center. So keep an eye on their website if you want to hear him, see him live. And also, he volunteers a lot at the Conrad Weiser Homestead, as he mentioned. So that's another thing that you could check out if you're interested there in beautiful Western Berks County. Every month, I come to you with something Pennsylvania Dutch language related. And this week, I bring you a poem this month, I should say, by Ralph Funk. Ralph Funk lived from 1889 to 1969, and he wrote quite a lot of poetry in the dialect. And since it is fall, I chose his poem, Sish Bootjaar, which translates into it's fall. And I have the Pennsylvania Dutch on the left-hand side and the English down the right, so you can follow along on either side, your choice. I'm going to read the Pennsylvania Dutch, though. So here we go. Sish Bootjaar from Ralph Funk. Sish Bootjaar, ja, just guck mal nas. Wie farbt sich die Natur? In Gris und Gel und Rot und Brau. Es gibt gleichreife Schuhe. Die Dauer war anfangs Katz, der Wind gleich rau und kalt. Bald schweben dunkle Wolken rum, wo Schnee und Rehe halt. Was sind die Dauer doch so hübsch? Kann etwas schöner sein? Wie spot ja jetzt draus im Land? Schlof die alt Erd ei. What a wonderful poem from Ralph Funk. Well, like I said, he's written a lot of poetry in Pennsylvania Dutch. You can find his stuff in a lot of different Pennsylvania Dutch anthologies. I've always liked his poetry, and that's just one to kind of make you think about fall a little bit, because that is the time that we are dealing with. And also every month I like to bring you guys a piece of music in Pennsylvania Dutch. And this month we are going to go back in time to last year's Kutztown Folk Festival, when two friends of the channel, Mike Herzog and Keith Brinsenhoff, performed a very important song in our Pennsylvania Dutch history, and that was the story of Susanna Cox. If you've watched the show before, you'll know that last year, I think it was in last fall, I had oh man, I can't think of her name off the top of my head. I had someone on that told us the story of the hanging of Susanna Cox and the history behind it. Well, there was a ballad written about her after her death, and this is that song. So I'm going to pull this out and see if I can get this for you guys. Share screen, share, and then I'm going to make it like this, hopefully. All right, and I'm going to go like this. I'm going to walk you through things. Enjoy this song.
Let me sing you a story from near Ole Town. A very sad tale that has long been around. About a young maiden named Susanna Cox, a lovely young woman with curly black locks. Poor Susanna, they took her away. Poor Susanna, they hung her today. Some say she was wrong, some say she was right, about what she did on that terrible night. It happened one day in 1809. A body was found in a wash house that time. The baby was pulled out by old Jacob Care, who saw it was dead and he had to beware. They took poor Susanna and put her in jail, in terrible conditions with no chance for bail. They said that she murdered her newborn young child, and soon that a jury would give her a trial. She said that her baby was not born alive. It never did breathe, not even a while. It wasn't her fault. but she was afraid, so she tried to hide it in a Coventry grave. Poor Susanna, they took her away. Poor Susanna, they hung her today. Some say she was wrong, some say she was right, not what she did on that terrible night. At 24 years, she was very young. She barely spoke English, just her native Dutch tongue. Her lawyers were poor, her fate it was cruel, and where she is buried, we haven't a clue. Susanna and her lover were often alone, but who was the father? Well, we'll never know. While he got away with a terrible sin, Susanna was hung, and the church bells did ring. The last woman hung in our state for all time, but who should we blame for this dastardly crime? A poor servant girl and a father unknown, and many a story about this has grown. Poor Susanna, they took her away. Poor Susanna, they hung her today. Some say she was wrong, some say she was right, not what she did on that terrible night. Not what she did on that terrible night.
Well, there you go, people. A great old folk song by our dear friends, Keith Brinsenhoff and Mike Herzog. And yes, Rachel reminded me it was Martha Coons who was on the show last year telling us the story of Susanna Cox. But if you missed that show, you just essentially heard the story. It's a true story. The last female hung in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania back in 1809. And, looking back on it now, there were a lot of issues with that case and the story itself, most likely innocent girl sent to hang. It's part of our story. It's part of our story. Craig says, "Ich gleich so Deutsch schwätze Hera." Me too, gleich. Me too, Craig. I like to hear Pennsylvania Dutch spoken too. Dr. All says, "Can you imagine going out to chop some firewood only to come back home an hour later and find out that the savages had butchered your wives and abducted your children? Would you stay a pacifist?" Oh, talking about those possible Amish and Mennonite, the Swiss that had joined. Dr. All has a very it's an absolute thing to think about, right? I mean, you would change your pacifist ways maybe too if something like that happened to your family, especially some of your loved ones. Really unbelievable. Well, we're wrapping up here. It's getting to the end of another month. Holy cow, another episode. I share this photo with you for a reason. In 1767, we have Johann de Turk has his house is still standing in the Ole Valley. And on the door of that house are these three images. Hopefully you can see them. Now, this is personal to me because Johann was my 7th great grandfather. And the three images we see look like Elvedritche, don't they? Which we've talked about before. Well, Rachel Yoder, my good friend, and who we do all the designs with on our Zazzle shop, she took, let me get this right. She took that image because she's a descendant of the de Turk family as well and recreated it for our new image that you can purchase in our shop this month. There it is. It's our Elvedritche shirt. You don't have to get it as a shirt, but the image there on the front, as you can see, comes directly from that door of the 1767 de Turk cabin in Ole Valley. And of course, since it's an Elvedritche, if you know the story of Elvedritche hunting, on the back it says, "Catch me if you can." So this is one of our new products. We're so glad to share it with all of you tonight. I love what Rachel did here. This is it's so historic, but also fun at the same time. And again, if you're new to our shop, we also have another brand new design as well. The simple rosette, one of the most popular motifs in Pennsylvania Dutch barn stars and also in our art. We have that out brand new tonight for you as well to check out. And what we're talking about here is our Zazzle shop. You can get tons of things. It doesn't have to be a t-shirt. It can be a hoodie. It can be a sweatshirt. It can be a magnet. It can be a sticker. It can be the thousands of possibilities. If you'd like to get some of your own Pennsylvania Dutch swag, well, check out our website. Go to zazzle.com/PA Dutch stuff, and you'll see all of our designs, everything from our Belschnick classical design to the ones that we looked at tonight, as also the ones that some of our dear friends are wearing, like the Donnerwetter t-shirt and the PA Dutch Stuff t-shirt and the Max Gut and the Ich bin Deutsch. You can check out all of those things. And as I said, they'll always show up kind of like in a t-shirt format, but you can take that image and then put it on anything that store offers. And it's literally like 1,000 different things, from a baby onesie to a bib to an apron. You can get our designs on any one of the products that they have in the store. Check them out. Christmas is coming. Make great gifts. Maybe you have someone with a fall birthday. Make a great gift as well. And it would make a great gift just for yourself. Just for yourself, too. I have like 8 of these t-shirts. And my job as a school teacher, I can't wear a t-shirt to work every day. So I look at them off and I'm like, I want to wear this shirt today. And I can't because I'm not supposed to. But you too can fill your drawers with awesome Pennsylvania Dutch stuff. Please check out the site, Zazzle.com/PA Dutch stuff. That much love to my dear distant cousin Rachel for the great work that she's doing on these designs for us as we put these things together for all of you to enjoy. If you like what we're doing here on the channel, well, you can support us financially. You don't have to, but if you'd like to, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Doug Mainford. All proceeds raised there goes to the upkeep of the channel. Things like lights, help pay the internet bill, new cameras, all that kind of stuff, microphones. If you like what we do and you don't feel comfortable giving any money, that's perfectly fine too. We're going to keep this content coming. And the great thing about YouTube is that it comes to you free. As long as you need is to be connected to the internet, you can get our stuff. Check out the website. Check out our website if you want to buy some of our stuff. If you'd like to purchase a coffee for me, I greatly appreciate it. I'd like to give a shout out to some people that recently have donated. Alan Moyer, he donates every month. Ginger Herta, Sarah Jane Williams, Todd Santee, and Wendy Baker. Much love to you guys for supporting us. Gross Dank für die Unterstützung. And you too can join that list next month if you decide to buy me a coffee. Mark your calendars, dear friends, because our next edition of PA Dutch Live will be November 15th. That'll be here before you know it, just a couple short weeks. And next month, I'm welcoming on Richard Mamana, and he is right now doing a lot of field work on Pennsylvania Dutch tombstones. And he's going to be sharing what he has learned. We're going to have tons of examples of tombstones to look at. And what is unique about Pennsylvania Dutch tombstones? What are some of the things that we put on our tombstones that maybe the English and the Scotch and the other European groups that were around us in Pennsylvania, maybe what they didn't do? Fascinating conversation. I can't wait to have Richard on the show. He is a wealth of knowledge, an absolute wealth of knowledge. So November 15th, right here on the YouTube channel, but you can also follow along on Facebook and on Twitter as well, or X or whatever they're calling it these days. I'm just going to keep calling it Twitter. I hope that you guys will plan to join us. It's been great spending another evening with you this month. If you're going to be at the King Frost Parade and you see me, shout hi. Otherwise, there's a lot of great things happening here in the next couple months in the greater Pennsylvania Dutch country. Follow along on PA Dutch 101 on Facebook. I post all of the upcoming events of things happening. Also posting links to new videos that are coming out on my YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and then you'll get a notification every time a new video comes out. I can't wait to be with you all next month. Until then, if you're going Spucke next weekend, I hope you get tons of candy. And if you got a Pennsylvania Dutch themed costume for Halloween, send me a picture and I'll share it on my social media. Whatever that might be, as long as it's PG-13, I share it. I got to be careful, right? But other than that, if you got a Pennsylvania Dutch themed costume, please share that picture with me on social media. Until next month, dear friends, as we always say, I hope to see you all next month. I can't wait to be with you in November. But until next month, keep practicing your Pennsylvania Dutch and Max Gut. Max gut zu dir, Max gut zu dir, Max gut zu dir für now. Unsere Zeit ist all und so es ist Max gut für now. Hoff wieder mit dir zu sein, hoff du bringst zurück ein Freund. Max gut zu dir, Max gut zu dir, Max gut zu dir für now. Unsere Zeit ist all und so es ist Max gut für now. Hoff wieder mit dir zu sein, hoff du bringst zurück ein Freund. Und so mach's gut, lieber Freund, mach's gut.